We stand together to strongly condemn conspiracy theories suggesting that COVID-19 does not have a natural origin. Scientists from multiple countries have overwhelmingly concluded that this coronavirus originated in wildlife. Conspiracy theories do nothing but create fear, rumours, and prejudice.
Hello and thanks for joining us. My name's Ian Stroud.
And my name is David Malone, and this is Hyperland. I wanted to talk about COVID because there was so much I left out of the film we did for Channel 4.
Yeah.
And there's such a lot of it, and it really is so under my skin that I just want to get it out there. But I know I go on a rant about this. I know I do. You've told me before. So you'll just have to just tell me to shut up when I get, because it just annoys me so much.
Yeah.
Because I feel it's important. I don't feel that this is just tidying up some historical footnotes. I do feel that. So
when you talk about conspiracy theories, whose conspiracy theories?
Well, that's the thing. Right, that quote was from the Lancet letter, the famous Lancet letter, where they say, statement in support of scientists, public health professionals, and medical professionals of China combating COVID-19.
Yeah.
And that, along with the Nature Medicine Proximal Origins, those two papers, everybody now knows, they said, this is what science has decided. And science has decided already.
Natural source?
Natural origin, zoonotic origin.
Yeah.
And that right there and then they're labeling everybody who disagrees as a conspiracy theory.
Okay.
And that all we're doing is creating fear, rumours and prejudice. And that has continued on, despite several years now, where the Zoonotic Brigade, to this day, have not produced one iota of actual evidence for the zoonotic origin of COVID-19. All they've ever done is say, in the past, all novel diseases have had a natural origin, therefore, this one must too.
Okay.
And I always feel like saying, your investment can go down as well as up. Just because Apple shares have always gone up doesn't mean that they always will forever.
Yes, I can see the...
Sorry, I get really, really irritated. Partly because I know the scientists on the other side, and they're not conspiracy theorists. They are some of the top scientists. No, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I can see it. You've taken this very personally, Dave.
I am.
Well, the Channel 4 documentary, then, let's start there.
All right.
With the pieces that have been missed out.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I understand making documentaries for TV programs. We're stuck in a 49-minute, 49-minute window. So,
all right. Can I just first of all say thanks to Louisa Compton? She was the commissioning editor of News and Current Affairs in Channel 4.
You just did.
And she had no hesitation.
Brilliant.
I was waiting for someone to make this film. No one did, and I wrote a grumpy email saying, "Do you not want it?" And she said, "Yes, I do." Send it to me. Yeah. She read it. In 10 minutes, she said, "Yeah, do it."
Great.
And that doesn't happen often. So,
no, that's brave.
Yeah,
that's brave.
I was really impressed, and thank you, Louisa.
Okay, come on then.
Okay, all right. In that film,
get angry.
What we left out were basically all the lies we were told, who told them to us, and why, and all the half-truths, and the way that a small group of scientists and all of their, I tried to be polite about it, basically not very good science journalists. Yeah. Well, actually, maybe they are good science journalists.
But they're towing the line.
They're embedded.
Yeah.
Remember how science, journalists were embedded with the army when we were fighting in Iraq?
No.
Well, that's where I first read the term embedded journalists. They had to be with the army.
Yeah, yes, no, I do.
And,
yes, I understand.
Well, fine, you get to go to the front line, but the army is going to show you what it wants to show you. And, and if you want to stay on the front line, you better not say anything rude about them. And this is what has happened to science journalists.
But the other reason you didn't get a lot of this out, I imagine, having 35 years making documentaries, there's a layer of lawyers that would probably have been squirming all over the top of this.
I mean, we were given the chief legal counsel of Channel 4, who is a very good lawyer, and his main concern was to make sure that we said nothing that could possibly rebound on Channel 4.
Yeah,
and so lots of stuff that I thought was really robust.
Yeah.
No, just can't have that in the film. Things which had even been, he would say, well, how do we know this is true? Have the Chinese admitted it? I said, no, of course they haven't admitted it. But I said, the CIA I know the CIA has looked at this, and I also know that the president's being advised on this.
Yeah.
Isn't that good enough? And he said, no.
Yeah.
So, so the film ended up, it took us the whole 40 whatever it is minutes, whatever a commercial hour is these days, just to lay down the basic science of why you should consider that a lab leak is a viable and open hypothesis. Yeah. And that's what my colleagues all said, you've got to do that before you can get into this other stuff.
Yeah,
and they were right. They were right. I know they were right.
Yeah.
But we left out all this other stuff. I should say that there's been suppression, and I think one can actually use the word suppression, certainly kind of censorship, not just on the Chinese side, but on the Western side as well.
Yeah.
Quite a number of the scientists that I spoke to, they had good, well-researched scientific papers turned down. Well, we're not publishing that. Anything that they submitted that was not going along with the natural origin, two things happened. They were either completely turned down.
Yeah.
Like Alina Chan had a really good paper, which I read, which was a rebuttal of one of the natural origin papers, just turned down out of hand.
Yeah.
Petrovsky had a paper, a really good paper, and it was just held up in this sort of permanent spin of, oh, we need to have this reviewed. Oh, yes, the reviewers have suggested this change. Oh, we need to send it back out for reviewing. Held it up for 12 months. So they could never say, oh, we didn't turn it down.
Yeah.
If you make the contrast, which I did, I can feel myself getting heated again. I'm sorry. On the proximal origins,
yes,
I actually... There's a whole bunch of citations. These are the papers they cite. They make a statement and then there's a little 1, 2, 3 afterwards. These are the papers.
And this was in the early days when basically it came from bats.
Yeah, this is right at the beginning. These are the two papers that essentially tried to control the narrative.
Yeah.
So I went and contacted some of the authors of the papers that the proximal origin paper cites.
Yeah.
Where they're saying, scientists know this is the fact, and then they would cite 8 papers. And I went and talked to some of them.
Yeah.
And I talked to one in particular, and their paper was, they submitted it, and it was accepted for publication in 36 hours.
Right.
Now you compare that to Petrovsky, it took him 12 months.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And I talked to these authors, let me get this one bit out and then I'll shut up.
Yeah.
And I said, did your paper really support the zoonotic, the natural origin? Because I read it and I thought, it doesn't really.
Yeah.
And they said, no.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't really point one way or the other. And yet it's cited in the proximal origin as, oh, well, here you go, scientific consensus says it's like this. And I went and talked to them and no, it didn't. Yeah, consensus.
No, the thing I was going to say is that the Lancet is, I don't want to call it the Bible, but I mean, it's
one of the top.
It's one of the tops.
So that's why it had such a huge effect, because...
Well, this is what I was going to say. So who signed up for that?
Well, yeah. The Lancet letter was a whole bunch of people. So, Charles Callister, Dennis Carroll, Rita Colwell, And one of the things which bothered people was that nobody in that list declared any conflicts of interest. And more than half the people on that list definitely had a conflict of interest.
Right.
Peter Daszak.
Yeah.
They are all from one side of the argument.
Am I going to have to beep every single name?
No, none of
Good.
them. And when we were making the film, we contacted virtually all of them and asked them to be in the film. Farah, we contacted him, by my reckoning, 6 times. And he was always too busy. He's at the Welcome.
London.
Yeah,
he's at Welcome.
He is a busy man,
but still.
Our film was the only one that was broadcast in Britain on that. You'd have thought he'd want to have a say or be involved or feel that he had a duty to speak to the public. It's not like we were just some, little tiny thing that was unimportant. We were the film that was trying to explain. Couldn't be bothered.
Yeah.
So there was those 2 papers, and as far as I'm concerned, a fairly concerted effort to keep a steady flow of papers saying, oh, it's zoonotic origin, and make sure that very little got published saying the opposite. And they also didn't, that side of the equation, they were always saying the Chinese have behaved so well, the Chinese, and I talk to people, and when I say Chinese, I'm talking about the Chinese government. Let's be clear about that.
Not
Chinese government, not all the people of China.
No.
And the Chinese government didn't behave well and didn't share everything. I mean, the largest database that's pertinent to coronavirus is it contains virtually all the information we have in the world.
That was in Wuhan.
At the Wuhan Institute.
Yeah.
And every scientist I've ever spoken to said, God, I wish we could get access to that database. And this was an internet. It's still there, but they took it down in September 2019. September. Okay, months before. Yeah. And when we asked, I mean, they wouldn't talk to us directly, obviously. They said, oh, well, we had to take it down because people were hacking it. Bollocks. Oh. Sorry. That's a tosh. They just took it down and no one has any access. But people on the natural origin, everything, we must cooperate with the Chinese. They never mention these things. They never mention the fact that some of the best work, which pointed out two things in particular, that there was no evidence of COVID-19 in the animals in the wet market, and that the Wuhan Institute was just up the road, and how early the cases were. They were Chinese researchers in Wuhan who were doing this work, and their work was suppressed and not reported.
There were the two scientists that did that research in Wuhan at the market.
I've got a copy of their paper, Zhao and Zhao, and let me apologize already. I don't know how to pronounce these names, but Batao Zhao and Lei Zhao.
Yeah.
Apologies to both of you. I'm sorry. And their paper was February 6th. It was uploaded. February 6th. That's really, really early. Possible origins of 2019 nCoV coronavirus. They're working in Wuhan, right? And
sorry, before you read it, what was the date of the Lancet? Just to get a kind of idea of the timeline. So this report came out
February 18th. So this comes
just before it.
Yeah. Now, I'm just a bloke in Scarborough.
Yeah.
I was paying attention. I got that paper. On the day it came out.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing
the Lancet would have
the Lancet and the Wellcome Institute, and they would have known. If a bloke in Scarborough who's just interested, and at that point I'm not making a film, I'm just interested.
If they're talking about conspiracy theories, that's kind of exactly what they're trying to rebuff, isn't it?
Okay, well, yeah, that's the other thing. Is if there has been a conspiracy, it's been on the side of the Chinese government and the upper echelons of the Western scientific establishment. If there's been any conspiracy, it's been there.
And any money that's been put into the
look, listen what they say at the end of this. This is Zhao and Zhao.
Yeah,
they say,
sorry, mate.
In summary, somebody was entangled with the evolution of 2019 nCoV coronavirus. In addition to signs of natural recombination and intermediate host killer coronavirus probably originated from the laboratory in Wuhan.
Just up the road from the market.
Yeah. But there's a map. They have a map where it says Hunan Seafood Market, and then it's a little thing, and the Wuhan Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the Wuhan CDC, and the Wuhan. It's all there.
Can I grab that for Instagram?
Yeah, you can.
I hope so.
And for a long while, those two authors, their biogs on the main database of scientists, they just disappeared. Now I think they're back. I think one of them is
washing dishes somewhere.
No, one of them still working in China, and the other one I think may have emigrated to America.
All right.
But they did just disappear because at the time I was trying to contact them and it was impossible. There was no way. These are solid, good scientists on the ground doing the work. Why wasn't that?
Yeah.
Why didn't that figure into things?
Come on then, Channel 4. What else was missed out?
Okay. There was, at the beginning, a Chinese government were trying to find out what was going on, who was,
Yeah.
and we know now that the numbers of cases and the earliest cases that were reported by the Chinese government to the WHO, which the WHO then made public, are wrong.
Right.
They lied. Simple, L-I-E-D, lied. And we know this for certain now. Papers have come up. There was a woman called Josephine Ma. She was the China news editor of the South China Morning Post.
Yeah.
And she was reporting then, she was getting the actual figures. She reported the first patient, and she's looking at official documents, was November 17th.
Oh,
okay. Now, nothing was said. This was never passed on. And what people have to know about the WHO is the WHO is not an investigative organization. When a WHO reports something, it only reports what the country of origin tells it.
Right.
So if the country of origin said black is white, the WHO will report black is white.
Yeah.
Okay. So we know that this is the case. And then one of the people who was in the film and I worked with, called a really good and clever man called Gilles Dumaneuf. He has done fantastic work looking at all these figures because he speaks Chinese.
Yeah.
And he's confirmed every single one of what Josephine Ma was saying.
Yeah.
So we know that there were official figures for onset of much earlier, and we know that the total number was far higher, and the Chinese officials knew the number was far higher and just reported a lower number.
Yeah.
We also know that the official report that the Chinese government finally admitted human-to-human transmission on January 20th. Now, that's really important because when you know it's human-to-human, you've got to take very, very different measures. But we know from a Lancet paper that one of the first cases which we knew then, and this is separate from Josephine Ma, we didn't know her stuff because it was suppressed. But in one of this early Lancet paper, they say there was a first case on December 1st. And that first case, other members of the family fell ill, and they didn't have a connection to the wet market. The first case did. Now, that's a single case. So you would think, okay, do we press the big red alarm button on the single case? When you do, if it's something as dangerous and highly transmissible as they knew, because first case, November 17th, already long dead.
Yeah.
We now know there were far more deaths than the WHO was told by the government. So the Chinese government knew it was dangerous and it was spreading and people were dying. So when they get, when the Lancet knows that there's a case, then you should have said then, look, we're really worried that this may have human-to-human transmission. But they didn't until January the 20th. And between December the 1st and January 20th, when they finally admit it, never mind November the 17th, we know that several 100,000 people flew out of Wuhan to places around the world. And we also know that several million left to go to other places in China. So there was a really serious human cost to that suppression of the truth. And all of this was left out. And this continued.
I can see your anger. I can see.
Well, I get angry not just because I don't like being lied to. I particularly don't like being lied to and then having people who are party to that lie condescending to me.
Yeah.
That really rubs me the wrong way. And it's not just, well, I'm upset because someone lied to me.
No.
What I see, what I really fear and what really animates me is we've got a group of scientists who seem to be happy to be party to, at the very least, half-truths being told. And they're saying, look, in that Lancet letter, they're passing off, and in the proximal origins, that we know now already that it's virtually certain that it's a natural origin. And they've already labelled the opposite as a conspiracy theory. So they're not saying There's the natural origin about which we're pretty damn sure.
Yeah.
And there's this other that could be true. The other hypothesis has just been already lumped in as conspiracy theory. So,
But, okay, I'm certainly no expert, but if somebody's going to say, we're very sure it's a natural origin,
yeah.
and they say it's from bats, and then your two guys in Wuhan go, no, we've looked through all the bats and there's no proof. Well, there is a science lab just up the road.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know how long, a couple of months ago, the news then came out that, okay, it wasn't bats, it was raccoon dogs.
Okay, yeah, slightly confusing things, but yes, exactly.
Okay, I'm good at confusing things.
Well, and I do feel that there are certain elements who are happy for you to be confused.
Oh.
I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah.
That the Zhao and Zhao, they didn't look at any bats because what they said is that they interviewed people at the market, and the people in the market said there were no bats.
Right. Okay.
That's what they say in their paper.
Yeah.
Is we talked about it and they mentioned.
Oh, okay. I thought they'd
But what they did is they said, look, if the bats had already infected other animals,
Yeah.
if it had jumped from bats to an intermediary species,
There'll
and these are
there'll
the species
be
that
proof
are in
of
the
this.
markets.
Yeah, there'll be.
They tested, I think it was 80,000 animals, not just from the market, but all around, to see if
Yeah.
they could find this COVID.
And you'd expect some
And they
kind
didn't.
of
There
trail.
was none. Well, exactly. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
You're pointing at the next big thing, which
Right.
is the other way of turning this upside down. Is we spent 2 years with the high priests of virology
Yeah.
saying, well, what's the proof for this lab hypothesis? Show us the proof. Show us the proof. And we're never going to get a smoking gun. The only smoking gun would be if you had the lab books
Yeah.
from the Wuhan Institute or the video.
Yeah,
and they have video in there.
You said that you saw a photograph. And
I have
in
a
the top
photograph.
corner,
Have a photograph.
there's a video camera.
They have, so we know that there were,
It was probably switched off.
yes, precisely. So that evidence will never be released. So there'll never be the smoking gun. The only way you can actually
Yeah.
prove it leaked from the lab, if someone said, yeah, sorry, it was me. Yeah, it was me. Sorry, I did it. It's not ever going to happen. What you have is an absolute tsunami of what you would call circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
It's not the evidence of the person watching them confuse the two Petri dishes and that's how it got out.
Yeah.
But that massive amount of circumstantial evidence, and it is massive, can be accounted for very nicely. It fits like jigsaw pieces into a puzzle
Yes.
of it probably leaked from the lab. When you try to fit those puzzle pieces into the natural origin, none of them fit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So go back to there would have been if it was.
Yeah. Okay. What you're getting at is basically the evidence that we don't have for the zoonotic origin. And there was a great paper produced by a biologist called Alex Washburn, and he just lays it out really nicely. It's a great little paper saying, look, there's 4 pieces of evidence which there will have to be
Yeah.
if it had a zoonotic origin.
Natural.
One, there'd be a geographic trail of infections consistent with animal trade outbreaks. I'm reading from the paper.
Yeah.
In other words, we know that the original bats were from Yunnan, probably down at the Mojang mine. It's 1,000 kilometers plus from Wuhan. So if it's a natural origin, either some bat said, okay, I'm going to Wuhan. And given that they normally don't fly more than sort of 30, 60 kilometers, this was a long epic. This was the bat's equivalent of Mao's Long March.
Yeah.
And this bat said, I am going to go to Wuhan. Or maybe it got on a train or something.
Maybe it's got a Batmobile.
We've got a Batmobile. So what you have to expect is all along that little trail where bat A flies 60 kilometers, in fact, some more bats.
Yeah.
You'd
There'd
expect
be a trail. That's what I was saying.
a trail.
You'd expect
okay?
a trail.
A trail, and not only would there be a trail of other animals infected,
Yeah.
but probably a trail where those every now and again those bats would infect humans or other animals.
So there'd be deaths.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, maybe not deaths, but there'd be a whole trail.
yeah.
All right, so that's what, and there isn't one.
Yeah. Okay.
And the Chinese have looked.
Okay. Next.
2, evidence of a high incidence of seropositivity in animal handlers. In other words, people who would be handling this other group of animals that were infected by bats,
Yeah.
domesticated animals or animals that we have some constant interaction with, the people who interact with them should have in their blood markers which show that their immune system has been exposed to this on and off. There isn't any.
Okay.
There's none of that. Nothing. Reservoir of animals testing positive with close relatives of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, because the bats aren't giving it directly to us. They can't, because the bat version of this virus doesn't bond very well with us.
Yeah.
And our virus, and this is what Nicholas Petrovsky, who was also in the film, said, our version binds perfectly with us and doesn't with bats.
So
it wasn't a bat virus which directly infected us. It can't be.
Okay.
It had to have gotten to some other group of animals where the bat virus started to change. Those animals were infecting humans backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
And so the virus would adapt to humans
Like
and
we see
eventually
with
become.
the bird flu.
Thank you. Yes. And the Chinese have looked and looked and looked and looked. And the Chinese are now saying it didn't come from the wet market, and we can't. There is no intermediary species. George Gao, who is the head of the Chinese CDC, the most senior scientist there, is now. That's what he's saying. So now you.
So who's come out with raccoon dog?
Okay, yeah, raccoon dogs.
I mean, that was the beginning of this year, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, this is the ongoing attempt by this coterie of scientists who have now so utterly tied themselves to the natural origin that if it ever goes down, they go down with it. Ooh. So they're never going to change. All right. We've got to this situation now.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's like the Lancet. Printing an apology on page 15, and
it's not going to cut.
It's not going to happen.
So they'd have to go.
Okay.
So Horton would have to go. Farrell would have to go. Dashik would have to go. Probably, yeah. Anderson would have to go. They would be sunk.
Okay. Well, so tell us about
the raccoon dogs. Right. Raccoon dogs is just the latest. So I can't remember. It's a few weeks ago now. The story suddenly broke that this is the official story, that a posting came up on one of the international databases showing some work by Chinese scientists showing that they had looked at raccoon dogs and found in the raccoon dogs lots of COVID.
Right.
And so this was, here we go. We finally found them. It must be raccoon dogs.
Yeah.
Not really saying, and we found 10,000 of them, because this is the thing. You can't find it in one animal. It has to be a whole population of those animals that is maintaining this infection and allowing it to jump backwards and forwards. And so, but nevertheless, and the story is a French scientist happened to be online because, as she said, I have a very bad work-life balance. I happened to be online at that moment. I saw it, and she then writes up what she saw, and then it's taken down again. It's disappeared off the international database. But nevertheless, don't worry, Florence Debar has got it, and she writes this, yes, we've now found it. And almost immediately, the usual suspects in the mainstream media, I think, I'm not going to say exactly who it was.
I'm pretty gobsmacked.
Right. Well, yeah, and you should be, because... And it was reported in most of the mainstream press. I'm pretty sure The Guardian said it, and I think The Atlantic said it. And suddenly it was, finally, we proved it, and the lab leak conspiracy theory is dead.
And they can go away. Yeah.
And everyone went, oh, God, really? Wow. Isn't it amazing that
science always gets there?
She was just happened to be online at that moment. Now, Florence Debar is one of the group of people who are absolutely convinced it had a natural origin.
Yeah.
And she's one of the group that the lazy mainstream press always talk to.
Yeah.
In France, she is the person they talk to. I've got a list of more than 50 articles in the French press.
All from her.
She's always the one they go to.
She's the voice in France of science.
So this is the side issue when it keeps being said, the scientific consensus is, there is no scientific consensus.
Right.
There's a small group, Florence Debar in Germany, Drosten here, Farrar in America, Anderson, everywhere that he'll be allowed to speak Dashak. They are all convinced that's not a scientific consensus.
Yeah.
I mean, I think...
Well, you're speaking to a lot of the people working on the ground.
Yeah.
They're all scientists, but they might not have that PR we're talking to the press and the media.
But one of the people in the film who said, "I'm not convinced it's a natural origin," and was annoyed like me that the natural origin people had presented it as, "We're sure, this is certain, and everyone agrees," was David Relman. David Relman is a top virologist. He was head of his department, I think it was Stanford. And at the time he was in the film, we didn't label him as this because he asked us not to, because he was worried about fallout for his family. But he was one of, if not the chief advisor to the president's commission that was looking into COVID. You remember when he said, I want to have, I've set the intelligence community to sort this out. Relman was the man. Yeah. Okay. And he agreed to give us an interview that I've been talking to him for months on the understanding that we didn't say, this is what's going to be in the president's report. Yeah. Because that would get everybody in trouble and would annoy President Biden would have gone, "Oh, you spoiled my party." But it was. So people on the outside know. So let me. Well, I'll finish the. Can I finish the raccoon thing? So then another scientist called Jesse Bloom, and Jesse Bloom is a very senior scientist. He works in Canada. He's tops. Yeah, I think it's Canada anyway. And he looked at the samples and said, "You know what? There isn't any. What Florence Debar said was the case, just wasn't."
What was he looking at?
He was looking at the same raccoon dog samples
that came up and disappeared.
Yeah, because he looked at her data.
Right. Okay.
And basically, all you can say is that there's a mixture of raccoon and human. But you could say, well, maybe the raccoons already had COVID-19 and gave it to the humans, and this is the evidence that it passed. Not very convincing. At the very weakest, all you can say is, well, it's just as likely the raccoon dogs were picking up infection from already infected humans. Yeah. And that now does seem like the much more likely hypothesis. Yeah. But Florence Debar should have known that and written it. And all the people, all of the secondary outlets who go, lab leak's dead. I can't get past the notion that if they are science journalists, they know that you don't say that.
But it's the story they've been waiting for.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
But it's wrong.
Has anyone been sort of trumping your side of the story?
What, shouting that it...
Yeah.
Yeah, very senior people. Richard Ebright, and Jesse Bloom and a whole bunch of others. Yeah. And one of the criticisms that was made of the film, and the lawyer would always make this criticism, which used to rub me the wrong way, but I suppose it's his job. Yeah. He would say, why are we talking to these people like Gilles Demeneuf? He's a data scientist. Why are we talking to relatively junior scientists? Surely we should be going to these top scientists like Anderson and I kept trying to say to him, look, the story is that the people with the most authority at the top levels of science, they are the ones claiming they are already certain when they can't be. Because it's this certainty. When you and I use the word certain, I'm certain of that. What we both know we mean is, I'm pretty convinced of this. Yeah. But when you use it as a scientist in a scientific journal, you're using it in a technical
100% certain.
Well, you can get into things...
Or 99.
Yeah, you can talk about, 5 sigma significance. I mean, it's a technical thing. Yeah. And I can definitely say they could not have been certain at the time that they wrote.
So there was no press at all really coming out on that?
No, not in the mainstream, because for some reason the mainstream had all decided that to talk about a lab leak was either anti-science or racist.
Wasn't the Mail?
Okay, yes, thank you for raising that. You're quite right. And it's another one of the weird upside down things of my life is that, I'm by upbringing and by persuasion, I see the world from a more left wing position. Yeah. And so growing up, I would have looked at The Guardian, as I said, and I read it through gritted teeth. But the two outlets in this country who through the whole thing said, we don't know. It could be natural origin. It could be
Could be a lab.
yeah.
Yeah.
Reporting as they should were the Mail,
Yeah.
Ian Birrell, who has done a fantastic job. And I've spoken to Ian. I don't know, I think our politics would probably be quite different, but he's absolutely done what should have been done.
Yeah.
And his byline through the whole thing has been exemplary. And then Matt Ridley at the Tory Graph. And Matt, I know Matt, and Matt would probably, if you reminded Matt who I was, he'd go, "Oh, that tosser." we don't get on, and we've clashed in the past.
Yeah.
But that's by the by. During this whole thing, he's written a series of really great articles, and then co-authored the book with Alina Chan, who's been a stalwart.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
But the progressive press, the press like The Guardian, who position themselves and pontificate as we're the guardians of truth and the right way of thinking about the world, have been appalling.
Yeah.
Absolutely appalling. They have basically been the Pravda of COVID reporting.
Yeah.
There's just been a party line and they've stuck to it. And it's been shoddy, doesn't begin to get to it. I'm just getting carried away again, sorry. Sorry. But, the fact that it continues on and there is no scientific consensus.
Yeah.
What you have is a small group of scientists, Florence DeBar, Drosten, Farah, Anderson, Daszak, and a whole bunch of others. And they've nearly all got very, very good reasons for wanting a natural origin.
Yeah.
Their entire professional life is tied to that now. And they're claiming that they speak for the whole of science and are actively saying, and if you take a different view from the one that we are pushing, you're a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
And they're not.
Yeah.
And there's something very, very wrong when science on this really important topic starts to be governed by seniority and authority and not proof.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed it, please leave a review.
And if you'd like to leave a comment, which would be great, we've set up a Hyperland Substack. So go to Substack, look up Hyperland, leave us a comment. We'd love to know what you think. And if you've got ideas that we should cover, that would be great too. Thanks a lot.
Brilliant. Thank you.